When you think about money, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, right, it's numbers, spreadsheets, complex equations. We're kind of taught that getting good with money is all about math. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real key to financial success has way less to do with how smart you are and a whole lot more to do with how you behave? And this right here, this really gets to the heart of it. We think finance is this hard science, something you solve with a calculator. But the truth? The most important financial decisions are never made on a spreadsheet. They're made around the dinner table, and they're driven by these really human things like ego, pride, fear, and our own personal history. That's where the real game is played. All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to completely reframe how you look at money. First, we're going to bust that myth that it's all about math. Then we'll get personal and dive into your financial story and these invisible forces like luck and time. And finally, we'll uncover the mindset that actually builds wealth and figure out what the whole point of it is anyway. Okay, let's dig into our first big idea. The core concept here, and this is a real game changer, is that managing money well is a soft skill. Seriously, it has way more to do with psychology than it does with finance. And this quote just says it all. You can literally be a genius with a sky-high IQ and still be a total financial disaster if you have no control over your emotions. On the flip side, someone with zero formal financial training can become incredibly wealthy just by consistently applying a few simple behavioral principles. It's not what you know, it's how you act. So if it's all about behavior, where does that behavior come from? Well, that leads us right to our next idea. Your own personal financial story. Because how you behave with money is almost entirely shaped by the unique experiences you've had with it. You can think of this as your financial DNA. It's your personal blueprint for how the money world works, and it dictates every single financial decision you make. And this DNA is coded by the era you grew up in, what your parents said about money, and the struggles or opportunities you faced yourself. And just look at this table. It's fascinating, right? If you were born in 1970, you saw the stock market go up like a rocket ship in your formative years. To you, investing probably seems like a no-brainer. But what if you were born in 1950? You saw it go absolutely nowhere. You'd naturally be way more cautious. Someone who lived through high inflation will never forget it, while someone who didn't might barely think it's a real thing. These aren't just opinions. They're deeply ingrained realities. So here's the crucial takeaway. It's so easy to look at someone else's financial decisions and think, that's crazy. But the thing is, those decisions almost always make perfect sense to that person, given their unique financial DNA. No one is crazy. We're all just trying to navigate the world with our own personal map. All right, so our past shapes our decisions. Got it. But what about the results of those decisions? Well, that brings us to our third section, where we're going to look at these powerful, often invisible forces that have a huge impact on building wealth: time, luck, and something called tails. We all know Warren Buffett. When we think of him, we think brilliant investor, incredible skill. I mean, his net worth is just staggering, a testament to his genius, right? Well, yeah, partly. But the real story is a little more surprising. Get this. Over 96% of his entire fortune was earned after he was old enough to collect Social Security. That is just insane. The vast majority of his wealth didn't come from his early high-growth years. It came from the mind-bending power of compounding, working its magic over an incredibly long time. And this is the key. Let's be super clear. Yes, his skill is investing, no doubt. But his secret is time. He started investing seriously when he was 10 years old. That massive head start let that little snowball of compounding grow to an unimaginable size. The real magic doesn't happen until the very end. And if you're still not convinced, just look at this. Jim Simons is, you could argue, a much better investor than Buffett. He's generated an unbelievable 66% annual return. But because he didn't really hit his stride until he was 50, Buffett, with his much lower returns over a much longer time, is worth 75% more. Good investing isn't always about the highest returns. It's about getting pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest possible time. Now let's talk about those other invisible forces, luck and risk. And really, they're two sides of the same coin. Think about this story. Bill Gates was brilliant, for sure. But he also had a 1 in a million stroke of luck to go to the only high school in the world that had a computer in 1968. His friend, Ken Evans, was just as brilliant, but he got hit with a 1 in a million bit of risk, a fatal mountaineering accident. Both were extreme, unpredictable events that changed absolutely everything. These 1 in a million things, they have a name. They're called tail events. They're that handful of extreme events, good or bad, that end up accounting for almost all of the results in any system, whether it's investing, business, or even your career. And once you start looking, you see this pattern everywhere. A tiny fraction of Buffett's stocks generated most of his wealth. Amazon tried tons of things that failed miserably. Remember the Fire Phone? But just two huge tail successes, Prime and AWS, drove almost all their growth. The lesson is you can be wrong most of the time and still win big as long as your few wins are big enough. Okay, so if so much of our success is driven by these unpredictable tail events, how are we supposed to think and act? Well, that leads us right into Section 4, Adopting the Wealth Mindset. This is all about shifting your perspective so you can play the long game. First things first, we have to get this straight. Being rich and being wealthy are not the same thing, not even close. Being rich is about your current income. It's visible. It's the person driving the flashy sports car. But wealth is invisible. It's the money you haven't spent. It's the assets in your accounts growing quietly behind the scenes. Real wealth is what you don't see. Here's another huge mindset shift. How do you view a market downturn? Most people see it as a fine, like a penalty for doing something wrong, and that makes them panic and sell. But wealthy people see it as an admission fee. It's just the price you have to pay for the chance to earn those long-term returns. You wouldn't expect to get into Disneyland for free, right? So why should you expect market returns without any bumps along the way?
And this brings us to our final and maybe the most important section. After all this, what's the point? What is all this money really for? What is the actual goal of building wealth?
It's not about buying a bigger house or a fancier car. The highest dividend that money pays is control over your time. The ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That is the single most dependable predictor of happiness. That is the ultimate form of wealth. The big danger, though, is getting stuck on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. This is the trap of constantly wanting more. You reach a financial goal, and instead of feeling good about it, you just move the goalpost. It's a game you can literally never win because the finish line just keeps moving. And the only way to get off is to decide what enough actually means to you. So I'll leave you with this question. We're all chasing some form of financial well-being, but have you ever actually stopped to ask yourself and define your enough? Because knowing the answer to that might be the most important financial decision you ever make.